This is Chris Sims.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
This is Danielle Smith, and welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Thursday. How's everybody doing today? Before we get into, a whole lot of things, let's talk some silver, gold, bull. They are my go-to for precious metals with their complete in-house solutions, whether buying, selling, storing, or adding precious metals to your retirement accounts. You know, they say gold is a measure of trust in the government, okay? The price of it. So let's hop on silvergoldbull.ca where you can see the actual chart. And look at this. It is at all-time highs, $3,600 an ounce. There you go. That's the price of it. And I'm going to flip over to silver. It's nice and easy. On Silver Gold Bull, you could just like pull up the chart and see what it's at. Okay. Back in September, in April of 2011, it hit $41.04. Currently, where we sit today, $42.95 for an ounce of silver. Just trying, whenever I say, I've been saying this lots, it's a measure of trust in the government, and I say it's plummeting. Well, I say, historically speaking, gold's never been higher, silver's never been higher, and, what does that tell you about trust in government? I think it says everything you need to know. And for SMP listeners, that Silver Gold Bull's got a little exclusive offer for you. Quarter-ounce gold coins from the Royal Canadian Mint. For anyone looking to protect their savings with physical gold, these low-cost fractional coins are a great buy. They got a whole bunch of other things on the site as well. Silvergoldbull.ca. I don't know if my tongue's going to work today, Thursday. But regardless, if you're heading there and you're buying anything, make sure to let them know SNP or the Shaun Newman Podcast sent you. It helps me, it helps you, and it helps them know that you fine folks are paying attention, which you certainly are. McGowan Professional Chartered Accountants, Kristen and team, they've been on the hunt for a CPA. I keep talking about it. I'm not going to stop until we find it. They've been turning customers away. It's pretty simple. Their business is a booming, and they can't take on any more until they find a qualified person to help alleviate some of the load. Of course, they offer accounting, bookkeeping, business consulting and training, financial planning, and tax planning. For more information in regards to them, go to mcgowancpa.ca. You can shoot me a text. I can always put you in touch with Kristen as well. Substack. It's free to subscribe, folks. Every Sunday, 5 p.m., it's become standard now. I think we're on to, this was week 9 of it, and this coming Sunday will be week 10. And in my books, that's about as consistent as you're going to get. Every week at 5 p.m., you're going to get a week in review. And for paid subscribers, the only place you can subscribe to the podcast, you're going to get a little preview of Monday's episode. We're working on some value adds. I know I keep saying that, but I want to make sure that when I start it, I don't just flop on it. I want to make sure that it keeps coming. But for all you people who don't like... For all you people that don't like getting your email inbox blown up, no worries. It's one email right now. It is on Sundays at 5 p.m. Like I say, it's become almost therapeutic for me on my side. It's been really enjoyable to kind of put together the week, show it off, and then let you guys discuss. And if you can't catch up on everyone, you can go watch a 2-minute video and be like, oh, I missed that. I didn't see that. It's really helpful for that. The Cornerstone Forum returns. Yeah, you better mark your calendars. May 10th, 2025. And we are journeying to, is that a word, journeying? We are on our way. I don't know why that sounds so weird. We are on our way to Calgary, Alberta. That's where the next one is going to be. Here's some details you might want to know about. It's going to be at the Windsport. I'm going to be announcing hotels here, hopefully before the end of the year, folks. I want to make sure I get everybody a solid deal if you're heading into Calgary. The 3 confirmed keynote speakers include Tom Luongo, Alex Kreiner, Chuck Prodnick. I've got 2 guest hosts so far confirmed this year, Chris Sims from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and Tom Bodrovics from Palisade Gold Radio. So it's going to be similar to if you made it last year or you watched it on Substack, because if you subscribe and pay for Subscribe, I don't know what's happening to my voice today, my tongue today, not my voice. If you're a paid member of Substack, you can go back and watch the entirety of the first Cornerstone Forum. Regardless, it's the same format, but we're going to be tweaking some things. And in those tweaks, obviously you're hearing an extra host here. Maybe you're going, oh, interesting. We're also adding in a trade show. I'm hoping to have more details on that soon as well. And early bird tickets are up, which means you can get the cheapest ticket possible right now for a limited time. No worries, more details coming out with that, and I will forewarn you when they're going away. This all wouldn't be possible, especially in Calgary, Alberta, of all places, if it wasn't for Silver Gold Bull and Bow Valley Credit Union. Those two have stepped up to be major sponsors of this event. I think it's going to be, well, something, and I look forward to seeing, hopefully, all of you join me there for an electric day on May 10th, 2025. All right, let's get on the tail of the tape. Oh, wait 1 second. Hold on. It's Thursday. Shaun's skipping things. How about this? We got three tables left. Where am I going today, folks? We have 3 tables left for the SMP Christmas. That's dueling pianos at the Gold Horse Casino on November 29th. 3 tables left. So if you've been dragging your feet, don't drag them anymore. There's only a couple tables. Well, a few tables. 3 tables to be exact left for November 29th here in Lloydminster at the Gold Horse Casino. All right, now we can get on to the tail of the tape. The first is a senior partner and lawyer at Grey Wowk Spencer LL with his Ph.D. in philosophy and host of the Grey Matter podcast. The second, an economist, freelance speaker, social critic, and author of Kingdom of Cain. I'm talking about Leighton Gray and Tanner Hnidey. So buckle up, here we go. Well, welcome to the Shaun Newman podcast. This is, it's always fun having multiple guys in the studio, but I'm running around with my head chopped off a little bit, getting things ready. Anyways, I'm excited to have you boys in. I'm joined by Leighton Gray, Tanner Hnidey. Boys, so thanks for hopping in.
My pleasure. Always a pleasure to be here and also with Tanner.
It is. Same thing. Pleasure to be with Leighton and you.
Now, I don't know. Where do we want to start on the... we can go further out. We can talk Alberta politics. Or we can draw it in a little closer and start in Lloyd. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with Lloyd. I want to hear about Tanner's campaign.
Sure. So let's. I think to the audience, I think most people probably know, but at the same time, you become like many a fixture on the podcast. You've been on lots, and you have some big news. So rattle it off.
It's true. The big news is I'm running for city council in the Lloydminster elections that are happening on November 13th. And the reason I'm running primarily is when we go and speak, me and others speak at a bunch of town halls across the province and events and so on, we always talk about, particularly during the question and answer portion of the speech, how important it is for individuals to become involved in the political process. We look at what happened over the last how many years here, and you can trace a map to show how so much of what the government did and what they were allowed to do happened because of apathy, right? Individual apathy. We weren't involved in politics. We let the government do what they wanted. And as a consequence, we suffered very terribly for it. And so we say at these events now, if we want to ensure that doesn't happen again, we have to be involved in the political process. And I think that, that happens in a variety of different ways. I know Leighton's Bill of Rights and so on. The Alberta Bill of Rights is an excellent example of that. But I'm not a lawyer. And so I thought it time to take my own advice and become involved in the way that I thought I'd be most useful, which is with council. So I'm running for council. It's exciting. It's been fun. Yeah, it's been fun.
I think it's great that you're getting involved.
You want to pull that mic just a little smooth?
Sure.
Just a little touch in you.
I think it's great that you're getting involved at the municipal level because a lot of people don't realize that a great deal of the federal government overreach that's happening is being done through infiltration of municipalities. And in fact, it's so severe that not that long ago, the provincial government, the Smith government, actually stepped in and basically told the federal government to stop going to municipalities and offering them money to...
Well, isn't that the Housing Accelerator Fund?
That's
right?
one of them,
yeah.
But also they've been presenting 15-minute cities. What you're seeing in Edmonton right now is an example of the federal government giving our tax dollars to municipalities in order to institute rezoning there, which is going to fundamentally change the way people live and move and work and breathe in Edmonton. Another example of the importance of this is recently there was a lot of talk about the Green Line project in Calgary, people forget it was the federal government that came in and promised Calgary all kinds of money to build that. And so now the Smith government recently came in and said, hey, wait a minute, this is not going to be built out the way that you thought it was going to, because the federal government had issued a broken promise, which Trudeau does a lot, especially to Indigenous people. That's another topic. But now we see the province on a lot of fronts coming in and saying, you know what, federal government, get in your lane. But what is happening in Alberta and places like Alberta and Saskatchewan, which are, let's say, flexing in terms of their provincial authority to the federal government, is the federal government's trying to do an end run and going to municipalities. And they even tried to institute 50-minute cities in a community as small as Olds, if you can believe it.
Oh, I can believe it, because we're 15-minute city discussion has come all the way down to Lloydminster, right? Like, I mean,
and it's textbook Agenda 2030, which Prime Minister Trudeau recently was abroad and made a speech that nobody listened to, nobody attended in the UN, and he said, he repeated Canada's commitment to Agenda 2030. I don't know many Canadians who are committed to Agenda 2030, especially in Alberta. No. But this is one of the centerpieces of that agenda is the 15-minute city, which they tried even in Paris during COVID. If anybody's been to Paris or knows about Paris, if the 15-minute city could exist anywhere, it would be Paris. We have a very sophisticated transportation system, abundant public transportation, a very, very modern and ancient European city, and it failed there even under the strictures of COVID. So how on earth could it operate or succeed in a place like Edmonton, where I grew up? I can't even imagine it.
No, I don't know. Like, no, we're going to do this because I keep forgetting to do this. Here, let's start here, okay?
Okay.
Thanks for rolling into the studio, boys, okay?
Oh,
we're going to talk 15-minute cities, but if we're going to talk 15-minute cities, let's talk a little silver and gold first, shall we?
Sure.
Silver, gold, bull. Anyone who comes in person to the studio gets a 1-ounce silver coin. That stuff is going up and up and up. So, thanks for
over $30 an ounce, as I saw yesterday in silver.
I think that's American.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because Canadian, it's higher than that.
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate you boys answering the call to come in the studio. It's always, you both know this because you've both been on plenty of shows. You've obviously, Leighton, your show where you host people. It's always, technology is amazing. Mm-hmm. But when you get to sit across from people and interact, it's just 1,000.
I'm envious that you get to do it.
Yeah.
Well, do it. We don't get to do it near enough, right? But we somehow find people out to Lloydminster,
including the premier.
Including the premier, yeah, absolutely, yes. Now this 15-minute city thing, because I've had lots of people bring it up to me, right? Because it's become. You think where we were 4 years ago, maybe less. If somebody brought up 15-minute city, most people are, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Right. Here in Lloyd, it's the entire place is a 15-minute city, right? Like, I mean, you can get across Lloyd even in rush hour in less than 15 minutes. So it's the concept of 15-minute that nobody understands because they're like, I don't get it. Don't we want things to be convenient in Lloyd? It's like, well, yes. But where it gets into the nefarious part of this is when you put on everything that happened to COVID and what they want to continue to try and do. Now, is it 20 years in the future? Is it next year? I don't know. But that's the nefarious part of the 15-minute city, right? Mm-hmm. When you look at Edmonton, you go like, well, what are they putting 15 minutes? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to go, we just went through it, and they're trying to implement more controls on you to help save the climate and, probably 3 other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be honest, the number, the time that we place in front of the term city, whether it's 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, it's irrelevant. Doesn't really matter what number that is, to be honest. Because like you mentioned, the nefarious part of it is what comes as a consequence of pursuing this agenda. So you have, zoning restrictions and you have rules and regulations about what you can and can't do. And of course, government says, oh, no, that's not coming, right? It's such a beautiful idea. But that's always the way Babylon works, right? It looks beautiful from the outside. And then you get into it and you go, oh, this actually isn't so pretty. It's not so beautiful. Actually, it looks much more like a dystopia than it does a utopia, right? And so, yeah, we're not as concerned with the number that's in front. It's just the concept itself of government telling you where to go, where you should send your kids to school, and so on and so on and so on, gradually restricting your freedoms until one day you wake up and they've totally vanished, right? They've been completely conquered by government. Yeah. It's the way it works. It's always like a Trojan horse.
Yes. And one of the features of it in Canada that they don't talk about is it goes hand in glove with multiculturalism, which is another really evil agenda, which even Angela Merkel has said is an utter failure. That's what she said. That's how she described it. But how it fits in with 50-minute cities is that we have massive numbers of people coming over to Canada right now. In fact, the UN just announced that they want to bring 600 million people to the United States and Canada. Well, the way that it fits in with a 50-minute city is that when it actually promotes the type of ghettoization that has happened in places like Sweden and Belgium and elsewhere, and it's happening in Canada too. You see this happening in the United States. We've heard stories about whole apartment complexes being taken over by Venezuelan gangs. So the 50-minute city would only promote that type of ghettoization, would prevent integration of people into broader society, which was the original plan and which is the useful type of immigration, which has made countries like Canada and the United States great. That is a shared vision of what a country is, and bringing in people from around the world who want to be part of it, who contribute to it, come over here and build families and businesses and careers and lives generationally. That Canada has been a multi-ethnic society, not a multicultural one. Multiculturalism is actually a Marxist economic Trojan horse, and I'll defer to the economist in the room here, but I dare say he would agree. Multiculturalism is a fallacy and a dangerous one that is actually destroying places like Canada and Australia and the United States, really throughout the Western world. And interestingly, it doesn't exist in other parts of the world. Douglas Murray recently was on a podcast, and he said, isn't it interesting that an English person can live generationally in places like India or China, but never become Indian or Chinese. But someone lands in Canada or the United States and instantly is a Canadian or an American, even though they haven't really done anything to earn that or be worthy of that, at least of all to understand and know what the customs are, what our history is, what our laws are, or nor even want to be part of that. So that's the problem with multiculturalism. That's one of the problems. But 50-minute cities, people should understand it goes hand in glove with all the other Agenda 30 stuff, Agenda 2030 stuff, which is unspeakably evil.
He's right. Leighton's he's dead on the mark, right? Especially multiculturalism is a Trojan horse, right? The fallacy of it is the idea that you can have two cultures which are diametrically opposed to each other in their views existing simultaneously with each other. You can't. How? How am I supposed to live with a group of individuals that say who believe that women shouldn't have the right to vote? Like that it's so contrary to classical Canadian values that it's impossible that the two should live together. And you see it in Canada, right? Look at the violence that's increasing all across the country. The cultures aren't meshing together. It's not just two cultures. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20, right? And so it's causing this fracture in society in which all of these individual cultures are vying for supremacy in the nation, and one will take over, right? One culture will reign supreme. There is one which will be most powerful, and it will be a culture that says no other culture is allowed to exist. Yeah, you have to then, so you see how it works, right? You fracture the society first with multiculturalism so that all the groups are so busy fighting each other that they don't have time to focus on, the big real issues at hand. And as that's going on, one culture rises up, it gains power steadily and well, actually almost instantaneously, to be honest. One day they don't have it, the next day they do. And now that culture is supreme and most powerful, they can institute what they will in society. Like you will have a supreme culture. There is one. It's going to happen, just the way the world works. So the question is what culture ought to be supreme? And then I think Leighton would agree with this, right? As far as we're concerned, it's the Christian worldview, right? Because Christ was raised from the dead. That's the supreme culture. It's what Canada was founded on. The Constitution was founded on it, and so on and so on. And so it's what should be supreme. That is the law of the land in Canada, or it should be. And if you don't agree with it, then don't come to Canada.
interestingly, even atheists agree. Richard Dawkins was recently quoted as saying that, talking about something called cultural Christianity, which is to say, and this is coming from somebody who is a vociferous opponent of all religions, but he said he wants to live in a society that is culturally Christian, that has Judeo-Christian values, because that is the one that is best designed to promote and permit human flourishing, tolerance of religious beliefs, different cultures, indeed promotion of them. So even atheists, even at the apex of the atheist religion, and it is a religion, folks, think that Judeo-Christian values are what we need in order to have a free and democratic society.
Well, I mean, just walk around.
Yeah.
You know, if you start, you know, you go down the prepping rabbit hole, right? And then you start walking around, you're like, just think we just leave every door unlocked. You can walk into all these stores. I walked into Shoppers Drug Mart the other night. Okay, it's 8:00 at night. Forget what I was picking up. Doesn't matter. And now you got all these self checkouts.
Yeah.
Okay. There wasn't a staff at the front door. I mean, sure, it would have beeped, but there wasn't a staff. I remember looking around, being like, I can just walk out the door.
Yeah.
What is holding me here to pay? Now, obviously, our values in this country, our culture in this country holds you there, and you go, yeah, I'm going to pay, and I paid for it. And I'm like, but if you were from somewhere else, and I'm not saying that they don't have culture that's similar, but regardless, it's got to be weird. I'm sitting in Shoppers Drug Mart. Nobody's there. And I'm not looting the place. I'm not taking things I don't need. I'm paying for everything I got. And I'm like, this is getting a little bit weird. Like the fact that you could walk in. And once again, we stand on the people that built this country to where you can do that. And you don't have to have, you know, like, you know, in the States they have conceal and carry or open carry for that matter. And one of the things about this this nation that's you got to fight for it is this ability that we're not walking around terrified all the time.
Yeah.
And when you talk about violence, it's creeping because you know, you just look at Lloyd and you start talking to people about how in the middle of the day, I don't know, don't walk downtown and go to the gym. I don't know. Right? That it's only 50 years ago. You would be waving at everybody.
Yeah.
Now, so on one sense, I go, you can't walk downtown, and on the other sense, I walk into Shoppers Drug Mart, which is on the other side of town. Yeah. And there's nobody in there. I mean, there must have been staff somewhere, but I'm like, walk in, check out myself. I'm like, that was a strange experience.
Well, this is you raise a really important point. It's in the Western world, we've lived under trust-based societies. That's what you're talking about when you're in the Shoppers Drug Mart, but it applies across the board. You know, your relationship with your doctor, the relationship with your lawyer, your butcher, your podcaster, right? We have relationships of trust everywhere. These don't exist everywhere. People need to understand this is unique to Western culture. And globalism is set upon destroying that, and all these agendas flow like rivers into the ocean, and the ocean is globalism. Because the globalist ideology, the people who want to destroy everything that we're talking about and everything that we love about Canada and the Western world, they want total technocratic control of everything that we do, constant surveillance, and that is the very antithesis of a trust-based society. And believe you me, it's not anything that we want. Great Britain is going through torment right now because the entire society is under surveillance, at least in the cities, and so people are getting arrested based upon social media posts, and coming soon to Canada.
Yeah, I might be talking
the law's already
three criminals here.
The law's already in place. Yeah.
Well, you look at where like I got talking. So I went out and interviewed 99-year-old man, soon to be 100 in January in Carrot River. And once again, I think I already did this once, but I showed it to Vern Crawford for bringing me out there to interview his father, Bill. And, like I got sitting around with another lady, and basically she was just like, so what are you concerned about today? And I'm like, well, that's an open topic. All right, let's have at her. Because like she's clued in, I'm clued in. You sit in this chair and you interview enough people, and you're like, holy man. Like when you look at the next month, less than that now, You got next like three and a half weeks. You got a BC election that looks like it's going to go the Conservatives' way, but who knows? That's polling. I always rag on polling, and now I'm like, well, the polls say. You have a Saskatchewan election right after that. Then you have, I'm sure, what the three of us, among others that are listening to this, are paying attention to. That's the UCP AGM and a leadership review there. And then you have the U.S. election. All bang, bang, bang. And I mean, Tanner leads off this podcast by talking about he's running for council here in Lloydminster, right? So you have all these elections, right? Under the big ones, there's a ton going on in Saskatchewan and probably BC as well. And then, I mean, within, so I go, in the next 3.5, 4 weeks, what are you guys concerned about? Like, what's eating up your time?
Oh, it's a good question.
And behind the scenes, what looks like a private, secret, clandestine leadership review within the Liberal Party of Canada.
Yes. I'm just got to throw it on the table. I want to talk about Alberta Bill of Rights. I want to talk about some things here with the UCP and everything else. Yeah. But I'm just kind of curious because if there's two guys that are clued in, I feel like you two, you're talking to as many people as I am. Well, true. Yeah. A buddy of mine, one of the book club, shout out to Ken, sent us all a video, hang out with the mad ones. Have you seen this?
No.
It says, oh God, why didn't I just pull it up? I'll pull up the first 10 seconds. People don't really need it. If you want to go find it, you can. But everybody's got to wait for Shaun to find it now. Okay, this is the start of it.
Spend time with the mad ones, the ones who question, the ones who create, the ones with genius and insanity that both scares and delights. They're addicted to the impossible, they're seduced by risk, they're playing reality like a game that only they can play. The mad ones are the chosen ones. They push, they attract, they drag others towards their future. They crawl inside you, show you who you are and who you actually could be. In a mad world, the mad are the only sane ones left. Spend time with the mad.
There you go. In a mad world, the mad ones are the only sane ones that are left.
Sounds like somebody who lived about 2,000 years ago in the Middle East.
He beat me by one. He beat me by 1 second. I totally agree. Beat me by 1 second.
Well, there's a C.S. Lewis, when he talks about what is Christ. He's a liar or madman or the truth, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I come back to it. You said we're mad. We joke about this mad thing. Mad ones. It just seems like it's like, oh yeah. Well, some people listen. It's like, I don't know. I'm curious what you two are staring at. I mean, obviously, you're finding a way to get involved. Yeah. Getting involved means running an election.
Yeah.
And for the city of Lloyd, I really hope you get elected.
Yeah,
right? Like, I'm not going to tell people how to vote.
Right.
But I do think you being on the city council would be a benefit. You've been touring all of Alberta, talking about tons of different things. Yeah. You're well educated. You've got a head on your shoulders. Recently married. Congrats.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
There's just a lot you can offer. Yeah. So, is that all you're worried about, or are you staring at other things, going, "Well"?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. You know what? I'm speaking about this on Saturday. As far as individuals go, right now, what's taking up most of my time, or at least concern, is the prevailing sentiment to put all of one's hope and faith in men or women, new politicians. You talk about all of these new elections, and with it, there's this wave of new hope that arises in people because a new leader is coming to power. Maybe Trudeau, maybe he's going next year. We'll see what the leadership review is like for the UCP and so on and so on. And it gives men this, and women and voters, this burst of hope because either my politician's in power or the guy that I want is coming to power and so on and so on. And of course, we do need a change of government, right? Like the federal government is the clearest example of that. We need a new one. But people have this prevailing tendency to put all of their hope and faith in a leader, in a person. And then after about a year or two, they realize that particular person maybe isn't fulfilling their promises as they thought. And so they decide to switch to a new leader, or they'll change gears and go to someone else. And then that process repeats for 30 years or 60 years. And then the person really passes away with no hope. right? Zero hope at all. So what I'm speaking about at this conference I'm at on Saturday is don't put your faith in a person. Put your faith in Christ. Well, he is a person, but don't put your faith in a mere man, put your faith in Jesus Christ. And that's true for my campaign as well, right? I'm very careful to not say we're here to save everything. No, now I do want change, right? The core of my platform, this is a shameless plug, but the core of it is the family, right? At the foundation of the campaign itself, apart from Jesus Christ, is the family is the foundational structure of civilized, flourishing, just, honest society. And if you have rules which benefit the family and which protect the family structure, then they're good rules, right? If you instead have policies which crush that family structure, which is really what the Liberals and a lot of big cities are doing, then it's bad for society. And you can watch society crumble as the family is torn apart, right? That's accurate. But we're careful to not say we're here to save you or I'm here to save you. Far from, right? Far from. And so in these hours of elections and in these months of elections, I think it's very important to remember politicians are just politicians. They won't save you. Yeah. And I don't blame people for looking for hope, right? Lots of things are so bad right now. Inflation, even though the government's so excited, it's only, just under 2% now, as if it still isn't climbing, and so on is excellent. Oh, fantastic. And, we have all of these issues with lockdowns or fears of lockdowns and government overreach and et cetera, et cetera. So we are looking for a salvation from it. But far from looking to government, who is the one giving us this oppression, we should look to somebody else. Yeah.
I think I'm sitting next to somebody who potentially could be a premier or even the Prime Minister of Canada. I think Tanner has all the makings. And what's exciting for me to see someone like him going into politics is he's young, he's well-educated, he's principled. And this is something that in Canada, unfortunately, we've not had over the past generation or so enough people like him going into politics. The young people like him, talented people, have been going into business, academia, whatever, but they haven't been going into politics because the impetus hasn't been there. This could be this could be part of the silver lining of the cloud that is COVID. That now young people have maybe been awakened, startled, had a road to Damascus moment where they're saying, wow, if I don't get involved and do something, all these other people are going to be running the country. These woke scolds are going to be doing everything. So I think it's wonderful that, Tanner's going in and just talking about values. I'm reading a book right now by Spencer Clavin, who's an American guy, Andrew Clavin's son. Just brilliant book. It's called How to Save the West, Ancient Wisdom and Modern Crises. One of the things he talks about in the book that Tanner sort of touched on is, in addition to those things you're talking about right now, in terms of politically, technologically, just amazing things are happening. I don't know if people saw a video of the new Elon Musk robot that you could carry on a conversation with. It's going to be available. People can buy them for the price of a Tesla car. And he just had a rocket. If people saw this video,
the rocket
actually.
Maybe I'm wrong. Was the rocket not more impressive? Maybe I'm just under.
It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing technology.
The don't get me wrong. The robot. I'm like, that's probably the more dangerous of the two here.
Yes.
Soon enough. But the rocket coming back and landing, I'm like, that is insane.
It's beyond belief. And with all that technology, young people now have made, I think, I shouldn't single them out, but young people especially have made a false god of technology. And what Spencer Clavin talks about in his book are these ancient principles, right? That are the sort of the pillars of Western culture, which are Judeo-Christian religion and morality, and sort of the Greco-Roman history of reason and thought that sort of underpins a lot of our law. That marriage is unique in Western culture, and it's those what Clavin says, and I agree with this, is we need leaders like Tanner who are going to be have an understanding of the modern technology and the needs of modern society, but are going to govern according to ancient principles, which are timeless and classic. And it's those principles that I think are going to be the wisdom that will guide us through all the challenges of this in a world full of like robots and rockets that land themselves and cars that drive themselves, and all of that these incredible, unprecedented challenges to us as a society.
I think just people are starting to, I think of myself, but I mean others. Lots of people have understood the problems we face, but I think ever since, the blessing of COVID is, you come through, and certainly there's some eyes open, but there's like once you've lived through that experience, there's no expunging that from the history of. They can talk about, moving on and different things, but there's just certain things people went through. You're never getting that through. Mm-hmm. I could probably bring in, and forgive me, folks, for not having just like every Thursday being a new story on somebody how they were screwed by COVID, because there is thousands of them, and they're all heartbreaking, and it just over and over and over again, right? We see it like the National Citizens Inquiry. Yeah. Yes. You want to go listen to, you want to have a wet eye. Yeah. I mean, go listen to some of those stories.
They've got new hearings coming up.
Yes, they do. Mm-hmm. Like my hat's off to them. But what I was meaning is, like, there's just no going back. And so one of the things that's coming out of that, and I guess I'll bring in the Alberta Bill of Rights, right? Because I listened to you, Viva, and Bruce Party. I thought that was an excellent conversation, by the way. So if people haven't gone and listened to Grey Matter with those two on, they really should, because it's three lawyers, and I would say in different levels, almost three black belt lawyers, right? Talking about this wonderful document everybody's excited about. The only thing I would have interjected with was a piece of paper is only as good as the crowd wants it to be. Mm-hmm. And right now, the crowd wants it. Mm-hmm. The crowd is very much behind it. Mm-hmm. And if we're ever going to stave off the mob, one needs to understand and be involved in politics and understand their rights. And I feel like that's the big change from COVID. There's no going back. I could be wrong. Like, maybe I'm completely wrong on this thought. Maybe we are going back into COVID lockdown 2.0 in 1 year. But as soon as I think that thought out, I'm like, I'm not. And I would have, I went along for a while. You go back and listen to I was like, I don't know what the hell is going on. I'm not going back. And I think, how many other thousands are not going back? That means, that bill already has the support of more people. And they already understand what their rights are. Nope, not doing that. I think how many people I run into that understand municipal versus provincial versus federal. And a year ago, I wouldn't even been able to tell you there was three of them, and Leighton might be like, oh, and you forgot this and this. It's fair. But there are people who walk in here and rattle off. I'm like, the difference is there is weight behind that piece of paper now. It is just a piece of paper. I mean, at all times, the Charter of Rights is just a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. And we've been circumvented by all these different institutions. But I think there's this knowledge that's happening with so many people that it isn't over in a month. This is going to be the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Just is. What a wonderful thing to have, to know. And if we raise families up and keep them together and raise kids up in that, you're going to get more Tanners. Mm-hmm. You just are. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I had Kaylin Ford on this week, and she was talking about her charter school.
She's brilliant. Mm.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. And you think, how many kids, 1,300 kids right now in it, they turned away, I think it was like 1,700, and they're opening up new charter schools. I can just hear people's mouths salivating at the opportunity to have something that's built by, because it sounds very interesting. And I go, what's that going to do for Alberta or Canada? Because that's a whole new crop. You're all worried about the public school system. Well, look at the positive things that are going on that are really going to change the trajectory.
Well, when you talk about the Charter of Rights or Bill of Rights just being a piece of paper, you're actually sort of streaming James Madison, who wrote the American Bill of Rights. He said the same thing. He was given this project to do in America, and he said, well, it's not really, it's kind of a waste of time, because a Bill of Rights or a Charter of Rights is just a list of promises that a government may or may not keep. And what he said, and this kind of gets at a part of the Bill of Rights that, as I go around and talk to people, they don't really quite understand. The real protection of freedom in countries like Canada and the United States, and this is what Madison said, is in the structure of federalism, is in the separation of powers between the different levels of government. And in our Constitution, which was well-fashioned, despite what people say about people like Sir John A. Macdonald, we have clear divisions of powers. And our Bill of Rights is really born out of two main things that are driving it. Firstly, as we talked about COVID, because COVID awakened people to the failure of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which, by the way, in my respectful view, was designed to fail. Designed to fail in terms of protecting individual rights.
Yeah.
It's been very, very successful in doing the things that Pierre Trudeau and company wanted to happen, specifically transference of power to judges, unappointed judges, and secularization of Canadian society. But one reason for the Alberta Bill of Rights is COVID. The second thing is massive government overreach, which has been accelerated since COVID, during and since COVID, and really since the Freedom Convoy. And so what the Bill of Rights really is, the way I see it, is an expression of federalism. It is an expression, and it's totally aligned with what the UCP government did from day one when they said the first bill they passed was the Sovereignty Act, which was simply a reaffirmation of what it says in Section 92 of our Constitution, which sets out provincial powers. But really what this Bill of Rights does is it says to the rest of Canada, and especially to Ottawa, that we are going to recognize and affirm these rights, and these rights and freedoms all fit squarely within Section 92.13, which is the property and civil rights aspect of our Constitution. Grossly underdeveloped, horribly abused by the federal government. But when I go out and I talk to people, I challenge them. I say, okay, tell me one aspect of your relationship with government that would not come under property and civil rights. There's no answer. It's all property and civil rights. And the province could expand that aspect of provincial power in the same way that the federal government has overexpanded its criminal law power to be expressed as an exclusive power over firearms, which they actually do not have constitutionally. It could be expanded the way the federal government has expanded the environmental authority, which actually is not in the Constitution, but they've expanded so far that they can impose climate taxes on everybody and tell provinces how to manage their natural resources. And there's just more on and on and on. The federal government has intruded into health. Right now they've got a bill, C-293. People don't even know this.
Just had lawyer Lisa on.
It's a health bill that essentially is going to take over. It's going to vitiate provincial sovereignty by giving the federal government the ability to declare a national health emergency. And they have no jurisdiction over health. Even the pharmacare bill, which is Mr. Singh's big talisman, his great achievement, requires all of the provinces to assent because the federal government has no authority over health. The federal government is intruding into daycare, municipalities, education.
Are you? Forgive me. Maybe my brain's. I don't know where it's been the last month or so. We stare at all the negative. So the thing that frustrates me about politicians. Well, okay. I'm going to pick on Mayor Gerald Albers, and Gerald, the only reason I do it is because you explained part of it to me. I come in with a problem.
Yeah.
I was, well, that's not a city problem. That's a provincial problem.
Yeah,
they always defer up.
Yeah.
And it's really annoyed me. And I got nothing against Gerald. Sorry, Gerald. it just stuck out of my mind. But what you're pointing out, I think, is we can use that system the opposite way, which is like, well, no, the province can't tell Lloyd what to do because Lloyd can be like, nope, these are our purview, so you stay out of our affairs. And one bigger than that would be the province, Daniel Smith and company, telling Canada, nope, you're not coming into this chunk of land because this is what is set out in law.
Well, Quebec's done it.
Right. So why? I guess it's changing the mindset though, Leighton. I think from like all I see is problems, right? Like there's a saying, stop telling me the problems, show me a solution.
Yeah.
And I just see it's framing all we have as problems to, well, why don't we just do this and this starts to become a solution. It's a way more positive outlook on where we could go in a trajectory.
Yeah.
Is it just another piece of paper? Yes, but things have changed drastically. I don't see us going back to another lockdown. I could be wrong. They certainly probably want to, but the conditions are different. Like, I mean, just look at You go talk to a couple industries. I don't know, firearms, silver and gold, a couple other things, and all of a sudden you'll start to realize people they're gearing up for something way different than Lockdown 2.0, where they're not allowed to talk to their neighbor, right? Like this, we're in two completely different worlds. And I think what you're talking about, maybe I'm wrong, and Tanner can hop in too by all means, is that instead of focusing on how they're screwing us, let's focus on how we can get out of this and actually make Alberta and other places way better.
Yeah. Well, I think like one of the things I appreciate so much about your Bill of Rights, is that there's such a concentration on, as you mentioned, property rights. That is so critical, right? Everything comes back to property rights. Like you look in the charter, as far as I know, there is no mention of property rights as an individual.
Deliberately.
Right.
The rights in the charter were left deliberately vague.
Right. So they're left vague, and that's critical because everything comes back to property. Like go back to the 10 Commandments. Go back to the Old Testament law that Moses gets. Everything comes back to property because when you read that law, you see it's implied clearly that you are responsible for your own actions, right? If you steal something, you are stealing someone's property, right? If you commit adultery, right, you are intruding in someone's house and doing what you're not supposed to do. It's someone else's, right? When you, even when you showed fire in a movie theater, you can't do that because that's someone else's property, and there are rules affiliated with that property that you have to follow in order to enjoy a movie there in that particular case. So when you exclude property rights from in this case the charter and so on, you give government an unbelievable swath of power to do whatever they wish, right? Because it's not you don't have the property right. So government can come in and take what they will, and they often do. And you go, this is my property. And they go, yeah, well, show me the property right principles and so on. So with Leighton's bill, right, with this Bill of Rights, it focuses on that, and it recognizes that you have to have property rights in order to really to live in a functioning society and to protect your freedoms. Right, Murray Rothbard, who's he's a little more niche, but he's a libertarian economist.
Yeah.
He's an Austrian economist. Wrote extensively on this, on how important property rights are, and his writings on it are, I think they're quite excellent, just because they clearly demonstrate how really if you exclude property rights from your Bill of Rights in this case, the other clauses are practically null and void.
Mm-hmm. This is a great point. In fact, most people know about the Second Amendment in the United States, which is the right to keep and bear arms. But what they don't realize is that in the other parts of the American Bill of Rights and the Constitution, there's no mention of property rights. The secret and the sauce of the Second Amendment is that it is a fundamental protection of private property. Because what is a firearm? What is a weapon? It is a species of private property. So if you cannot take firearms, then you cannot take any other type of private property. Now, when you turn that on its head, you begin to understand why in every totalitarian society that we know of in recent memory, they've all been confiscators of firearms. The Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, Maoist China, Cuba, Venezuela, now Canada. Okay.
Oh, and I was thinking Australia. Australia doesn't have firearms
either. They don't, and they're getting quelled with rubber bullets, if you remember.
Yeah.
But the thing is, people need to understand if they can take your guns, then they can take all of your private property.
Yeah.
And we're living in a country where the federal government has already seized private property, as we know. During the Emergencies Act, they did it improperly. It was found to be illegal by a court, by Justice Mosley, and the federal government has done absolutely nothing to recognize that or to grant any sort of relief to the people who were harmed.
But once again, what gives me hope, okay, so it's coming in the Bill of Rights, right? Mm-hmm. It's for people listening who haven't read it.
Yeah.
This is a part of what you guys have proposed, correct?
Yes.
It was another one of your podcasts because I went down a Leighton Grey rabbit hole, and it was Mitch Sylvester saying 350,000 Albertans are lawful gun owners. I'm like, well,
and almost 3 million nationwide. 3 million.
But here's the thing. I'm like, 350,000 Albertans. I'm like, man, that's a good stat. And here's the next thing I know for certain. There's people you think are gun owners that love guns, love everything about it, and they're not. They don't have a license or whatever because they've never gotten one or they don't believe in it and whatever. So 350,000 is the bare minimum in Alberta that are. And I'm like, that is something that gives me a lot of hope on where Alberta, those are positive stats in my mind.
Yeah.
Some might find that scary. I'm like, 350,000?
Where's all the gun crime? Because the basis for confiscation is safety, public safety. We've got millions of guns in Canada. Where is all the rampant gun? This should be the Wild West.
Yeah.
Actually, what we have in Canada are arguably the most responsible gun owners, not only in the world, perhaps in history of the world. We have the most responsible. When you look at the actual stats on gun crime in Canada, we probably have the most responsible gun owners that have ever, in any society that ever existed. So why is the federal government wanting to confiscate all the guns? People should be asking this question.
Well, because if you also read history, as you just pointed out, I mean, when your population doesn't have teeth, it's pretty easy to push them around, right?
How does it improve the lives of Canadians to seize and confiscate their property? Coming back to Tanner's point. Our government should be creating rules that allow us to preserve and protect our property. That is their constitutional
Sure, but the government right now does a whole bunch of things, Leighton, that aren't for me getting a better life. That's just it seems like every day it's one of probably 50 things the federal government's doing, where you're just like, oh my God, right? Like, Chrystia Freeland was just talking to Tom Korski on Blacklocks about it, right? They're gonna tax vacant lots, or that's what they've, this new and you're like, oh my God, just stop. Just stop. Like, just stop. But that's why you need to have a new government come in. And I don't mean to say that they're going to go and fix all the problems.
No.
But some of the stupidity has got to stop. Because it's, it was a guy sitting across from me once upon a time when I heard him speak for the first time. I was thinking about this morning. It was Wainwright, Alberta. We were there to talk about RM laws on how many chickens you could have and some of the things like that. And this is the first time I'd ever heard Tanner speak before. And he said something very profound that has stuck with me. Obviously, I was thinking about it today. And it was, the big laws give you freedom. The small laws, they wipe it out. And you just think of where we sit today with everything going on and all these different things. The gun thing is certainly one. And the fact there's so many lawful gun owners gives me a ton of hope. But the federal government just keeps ramming things in, and provincial governments as well. Nobody's free from this sin.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. That I can't take credit for that big laws quote. That's a Chesterton quote, but it's right. Like,
well, you can take credit for introducing it to me.
If you had a society that was structured just in the 10 Commandments for a foundation, that's a great start. You don't need much more after that. You really don't, right? We have a government or governments that care more about how much Windex you're spraying on your window than they do for the crime which is rampant downtown, and you go, why is the society dysfunctional, or why is it becoming dysfunctional? And it's for that reason, right? You and I, this isn't hyperbole. You and I are more concerned about trying to avoid breaking the law than criminals are, in a sense, right? The book of laws is so large and it's so invasive with these small little pesky laws, right? You can't do this, can't do that, can't do so and so. Health authorities coming to check on this. Some other authority is coming here. How tall are your fences and so on? That we have no time to focus on the simple laws. Don't steal. Don't murder, right? Don't commit adultery. Don't, covet isn't, illegal, but the law says it is, and so on and so on. Those are the laws that should be maintained by government. And again, it all comes back to property. You start with the property rights, and from that foundation follows.
Actually, on this point, I just read a book by Neil Gorsuch, who's a Trump appointment to the United States Supreme Court. He has a new book out called Overruled. He talks about this, how we just have an overabundance of law. And one of the examples that he cites is a case that actually went to the U.S. Supreme Court of a retired guy who was a magician. And he would go around and appear at neighborhood birthday parties and things like that. And part of his act was he would pull a rabbit out of a hat. Well, during COVID, some busybody, woke scold, reported him to the bureaucratic authorities. And one of these people showed up at a backyard birthday party and asked him for the license that he needed for his rabbit. Because according to the regulations, the bureaucrat was treating the rabbit in the Magic Act as a zoo animal or a circus animal or some other type of creature that is used in commercial enterprise. And that gives you an idea of the extent to which we have become overruled and overregulated.
Yeah.
And the worst part of it is the people creating and enforcing these laws, just like we had with AHS during COVID, are not people we don't even know who they are. We never voted for them. We never would vote for them.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the lady who was the investigator who shut down Grace Life Church. She shut down a church and imprisoned. She actually was responsible for creating a law that would shut down and triple barricaded that church for months. And she also was directly responsible for imprisoning a wonderful Christian pastor, Pastor Coates. And when I asked her what training she had in investigation and in crime, she said that she was on a 30-minute Zoom call. And so this is the problem. This is the great danger of being governed by a society of busybody bureaucrats and this overexpanding government. So coming back to the Bill of Rights and protecting property, part of that, and implicit in the Bill of Rights is, and coming back to your earlier point about trust, implicit in a Bill of Rights is a government saying, maybe we have too much power. Maybe we've got to give some of this back. Here you go. So this is what I see, and it's significant to note for the people who are listening and watching. Alberta is the only province that's talking about a Bill of Rights. I think our premier and our government is recognizing, look, we've got to restore this trust, and one way of doing that is through this Bill of Rights, because it says to Ma and Pa average, look, we don't need all this power. We're gonna protect you from government. We're going to make at least some promises to you that we're not going to do certain things. For example, we're going to recognize that you have bodily autonomy. You don't have to participate in a global drug experiment that might maim or kill you or change your DNA forever. So I think what's happening here with the Bill of Rights is very important to see it in the broader, context that Tanner's talking about.
Sticking on the Bill of Rights for an Albertan. Like, is this, forgive me on not knowing all the levels of law, right? It's like, okay, it says, I guess, where does it stand in the law once this is put through? Let's just say it gets put through. Right. There it is. Now, what does it do in the court of law?
Well, this is, again, coming back to the concept of federalism. One of the mistaken impressions Canadians have, but it's natural that they do because they're constantly told this, erroneously, Canada does not have a national government. We have a federal government that is sovereign within very specific areas of jurisdiction. We have provincial governments that are sovereign within their specific areas of jurisdiction. And this gets at the wisdom of the people who framed the Constitution, because what we have in Canada is a vast geographical country with incredible diversity that doesn't need to be imposed upon us, because we have, everywhere you go in the country, it's beautiful, and we have great people. We have great food. We have different languages, different dances, all kinds of things. But the framers of the Constitution recognized that the different regions in Canada are different and they're distinct. And so we needed to have provincial governments that could govern appropriately for that region, because the most important government to anyone is the one that's closest to your door. So let's take an example of what you're talking about. Under Section 9127 of the Constitution, it says that the federal government has exclusive authority over criminal law. Okay, so that's true that the federal government gets to make the criminal law. However, it's also true that the provincial governments actually prosecute crimes and enforce the laws. And this is something that people were confused about in the Coots context, right? But Section 9127, even though it gives the federal government exclusive authority to make criminal law, so we have this big book called the Criminal Code, it nowhere gives the federal government exclusive authority over firearms ownership and registration. That's an overreach. In fact, as I was saying, under Section 9213 of the Constitution, which gives provinces exclusive authority over property and civil rights, in fact, the federal government should not be anywhere near firearms, the types of firearms laws that it's passing right now, because firearms are clearly property and they're solely within jurisdiction of the provincial government. So coming back to my point earlier, the federal government has been allowed, especially over the past 50 years, to concentrate more and more power in itself, and especially under prime ministers like Trudeau and Mulroney, and even Harper, and now the latest Trudeau, we've had this concentration in one office.
Yeah.
You don't have to apologize. I'm a fan of very few politicians.
Yeah. But we have this concentration of power, of political power, but it's not legal power, right? So part of what the Bill of Rights is attempting to do, if it's done right, it's a statement to judges, it's a statement to Canadian society, it's a statement to legislators. Look, we are going to get back to governing Canada according to the Constitution, because right now in Canada, by and large, that's not being done, because what we have is a dictatorial federal government that thinks that it can do anything it likes and has no regard for the Charter, has no regard for the separation of powers. In fact, Bill C-69 and the plastic reference are great examples. And there are others where they just think that they can legislate in any area they like. And the only premiers in Canada right now who are saying no seem to be in Alberta and Saskatchewan. I pray that begins to change, and that this Bill of Rights is going to be a signal to the rest of the country and a ray of hope to them that we can get back to peace, order, and good governance in our country, which is actually what's promised in the Constitution.
What are you guys' thoughts on the AGM coming up?
I'm curious. I'm excited to go to it to see what it's like. I read the. Did you read the policies that they emailed out to members who were going?
Yes. And where we sit right now, I think, is somewhere just under 6,000 people showing up, I think. I don't know if anybody's got an updated number on that.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Well, it's a record for Canada, right? Like, it's now, forgive me, I didn't mean to, just wanted to throw that in the context, right? Like, there is a ton of people going. And a shameless plug on my own show, me and Twos have a hospitality room going on there for the mashup.
Do you?
Where we're going to set up, I don't know, I got to get there and actually visually see it. But we'd like to set up a roundtable forum where people can not only watch, but then, as people such as yourself and others, right? Because you think of all the people that are coming to this.
Yeah.
There's going to be some wonderful voices that you probably could have a 14-hour roundtable and just let people come in and talk about what they think. And I don't know how that's going to work. And I hate to get people's excitement too high, but there is going to be a mashup hospitality room, and we'll see what that entails. And hopefully, all of us can meet up and discuss. But, I mean, in the lead up to it, you got this large sum of people rolling in. You got different things. Leighton walks in with his black hat today, right? I think that's become pretty commonplace. And certainly if you want to give a plug or a little background on what it is, if people don't know, fire away.
So I mentioned earlier that the genesis of the Bill of Rights was COVID, but it's also a very principled group of people in the Premier's home riding in Brooks and Medicine Hat. And they took this up, and it's a wonderful story about, Tanner was talking earlier about how he's getting involved in his community. It's a wonderful story about how in Alberta, and I would say in Saskatchewan too, there still is a spirit of grassroots populism where people feel like they can get involved in politics and make a difference. And so this Bill of Rights that you're seeing come to fruition is not, a group of, ivory tower lawyers in downtown Calgary. This is a group of guys wearing black hats, ex-military people, just good, hardcore country folk, intelligent people, but not lawyers. I was brought in late to sort of help to, I would say, curate what they had done. But what you see in this document was largely written by everyday people, just like you and others. I think it's a great testament to what people can do when they decide that they don't like what they're seeing and they want to make a difference. They want to make a positive contribution. And I think that that in and of itself is a great is a great statement about our province and about our country too. So these are just regular guys, and they're basically cowboys, and they wear the black hats, and so this has become their signature sort of piece. And as luck would have it, the only cowboy hat that I had was black. So it appears God's hand was working in it, as is in almost everything. But really, they deserve much more credit than I do for being part of the Black Hats. Myself and another wonderful lady named Shaun Sundal, who's a parental rights advocate in Alberta. She and I were brought in late, kind of as consultants.
What is her parent project? Why am I forgetting the first word? That's terrible. Shaun, yes. I apologize.
Yeah. Yeah, I should know that too, but it escapes me.
I'm looking it up. That's irreplaceable. I wanted to say...
Irreplaceable parent. Yeah. Sorry, Shauna. But I did remember I did mention your name, Shauna.
She literally, somewhere she's laughing, I hope, because she's been on the podcast. She sat in the studio. She's actually done one of her talks in Lloyd. The Irreplaceable Parent Project. Oh, that's that. To me, these are all the things that I go, this isn't the same world as 4 years ago. You got close to 6,000 people, maybe it is 6,000 people now, I don't know, descending on Red Deer. You have, the Black Hats, which I think has become, people. You got Take Back Alberta. You have, now you got this 1905 committee, right? I've had Nadine Wellwood on, and on it goes. Heck, 4 years ago, I wasn't talking about any of this, right? So, among others. This has become a different beast all together. Doesn't mean there isn't nefarious players working in there, because you got also maybe slipping in is the NDP trying to galvanize a force to go in and vote Danielle Smith out. They see maybe a little blood in the water, and I go, careful what you wish for, because the other side of that might be something even, by worse I mean even better. I don't know what the other side of that could be.
The best pundits I've seen think that she's going to get an 80+% endorsement. Time will tell. But I have a question for you, gentlemen. I'm really interested to know. Why do you think that the sort of Bill of Rights, let's call it populism movement, is unique to Alberta? And bear in mind that the Premier, the announcement of the Bill of Rights has been a real boost to her popularity. I know she did a short video that on Twitter had over 500,000 impressions. But this seems to be something uniquely Albertan. Why do you think that is? I'm interested to get your take on that.
I think it's a fundamentally Christian bill. Michael Wagner has a book on the history of Alberta, and I don't know if you read it. It's fascinating, in which he details, I think very simply but very eloquently, why Alberta is different culturally than the rest of the country. And he looks at our history and Christian roots in this province and so on and so on. So we want to talk about culture. I think it's different in Alberta because fundamentally our culture is different. I believe our culture fundamentally, compared to the rest of the country, is more Christian. I'm not saying we're not a secular society. We certainly are. But you have in this province an adherence, or at least a willingness to adhere to a Christian code to a greater degree than other places across the country, certainly, in the East and so on. Because I think this bill is fundamentally Christian, right? It has that at its foundation. You have the 10 Commandments, right? As part of this bill, you can see that integrate into the entire proposal itself. I think it's taking root here. That's why it's just a different culture, right? It totally harkens to this argument about multiculturalism and how multiculturalism fundamentally cannot work. And it's not meant to work, right? From Trudeau's perspective, you hear Trudeau all the time say how diversity is our strength. Diversity is our strength. Now, if you take that quote and you apply it to you and I, to our lives individually and as a community, clearly that's a lie. Diversity isn't our strength, right? It tears us apart. That's been documented time and time again, and it's being documented right now. But if you take that quote, diversity is our strength, and you apply it to Trudeau and his government, then for them it is a strength because it makes the entire nation weak. And so it allows the government then to do what they wish without very much, pushback against their advance. So with this Bill of Rights, because Alberta's culture is different and because it's unique, Saskatchewan shares in it too, for sure. But because, you might even generalize and say because this Midwestern or Western culture in Canada is different than it is in the East, right, with the Laurentians and so on. It demands a different style of leadership, a different sort of government, and a different focus on, in this case, individual rights. So that would be my answer.
I'm very pleased to hear you say what you do about the bill and its Christian foundations, because that's one of not only the weaknesses but the dangers of the charter.
Yeah.
And of course, Michael Wagner talks about this in another of his
books,
Leaving God Behind, where he says basically the charter is a very secular document, and it was designed to secularize Canadian society. It's been enormously successful in doing that.
But I don't know if it answers the full question, because when you think about it, why Alberta? Why not Saskatchewan? Why does Saskatchewan still have the same premier that imposed everything when the rest of, not all of Canada, but the rest of the independents have booted or changed or, it's a very interesting question. I don't know if I have the answer for I certainly can't say it as eloquently as Tanner. But I just go back to, there's something here because, the answer would be the people. I go why doesn't Saskatchewan have, why is there no, I hate to put myself in that ring because I love Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
But by now I've probably shown a few cards that I live in Alberta and I'm dictated by Alberta, even though I'm right on the border of Saskatchewan. Why doesn't Saskatchewan have whoever that is? I don't know, right? When you look at Alberta on the flip side, and I apologize to all Saskatchewan because I'll probably get about 14 texts about different shows. But you look at it and you're like, there's a lot of different things going on in Alberta. And it was the first place to boot Kenny, put in Danielle Smith. Yep. It gave rise to the David Parker of the world. You got I just think of some of the things going on. I listen to Cain Ford and I'm like, holy crap. And I should point this out. I know in Saskatchewan you have your own things going on, and it's hard to fully understand everything in two provinces because a guy sits in this chair, does 5 shows a week. I can't keep up with it.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So, but the question is about Alberta. Why isn't Saskatchewan doing it? And that's a good question.
Yeah, it is.
Because it isn't just that the bill has a Christian background. Certainly that could be part of it, but why hasn't Saskatchewan given Mo the boot? Why? There's rumblings, there's talk that this is his last election, but it's his last election. I mean, look at it starting to pull apart there. They got different parties trying. I know a ton of wonderful people there, and yet Alberta's doing it differently. You have the Bill of Rights. You have the first premier ever to say, hey, I'm sorry for what happened during COVID. Even if people get upset because she apologized after that about some of her comments. She's the only one that I know of, for sure Canada, I would say North America, that said those things. And, you start to extrapolate. It's like, what is it about Alberta? Right? I'm sure the audience, I can already feel I can anticipate that the phone's going to be buzzing about what makes Albertans different.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting question.
And we have to ask the other question too is, why is Danielle Smith open to this, the government open to this, and why now? These are really good questions because, of course, it's been 50 years since we had the first Bill of Rights. It was Premier Lougheed. It was, interestingly, one of the first bills that he brought in. But, she could have just shut it down and said, no, we're not doing it.
Well, my answer to that would be, then the leadership review would be, I guess my answer to that, I don't know if this is right? Danielle could sit here and tell me different. I'm sure she would. But I look at it and I go, I could feel the way this was trending for Danielle Smith. It wasn't good. Then she announces the Bill of Rights. Then she comes out and talks about parental rights. And all of a sudden she went from trending a certain way and boof, she's taken a jump on whatever that is,
Mm-hmm.
the trampoline, or, people can't see what I'm doing with my hands, but you get the point. Everybody I interviewed, everybody I was following, I was like, this is really strange. Everybody is against Danielle Smith right now.
Yeah.
This is the crowd that got Danielle Smith in.
Right.
All of them aren't with. So
Right.
why now? My simple answer would be she's staring at what's going on. She's been doing town halls across all of Alberta,
Right.
and she's going, people are upset. And she won't say that, but she's not no dummy. She's looking at the questions coming at her, and this has been something that has been, pushed on her. Like, this needs to get done. Heck, she's talked about lots of different things. So why now? I would say because people have held her feet to the fire and say, if you don't, we got a leadership review here in now, 3 weeks. You don't, I'm showing up and I'm voting you out.
Well, I hope it's not just political expediency. I hope it's more than that. I hope that
I think listen. I think she believes in it, right? I do. But I mean, what have we seen out of politicians?
Yeah. They're
If there's nothing pushing them to get things done, they're probably like the rest of us. Oh well, I'll get to it when I get to it. If I don't set deadlines for myself, you can kick things way down the road.
Sure can.
Look at tax season when we all go racing in there. Get taxes done. I don't know.
One subtle change that maybe people didn't notice, but what I see as a seismic shift for her is the removal of her chief of staff.
Yeah.
And going to Rob Anderson, who is a lawyer, and he was principally responsible for the Alberta First concept, which became the Sovereignty Act. And that's a significant change. He's been involved in the background, but now he's a chief of staff, and the previous chief of staff was also chief of staff for Mr. Kenny. So what's going on within the party, as far as I can tell, I'm not an insider, but I've gotten a glimpse of the inside from being involved in this Bill of Rights thing, is that there's still a yin and yang within the party between the progressives and the small c conservatives.
Yeah.
There's a battle going on there. She's facing all of that, and that's not to apologize for her, but I think that's part of the reason why her small c conservative agenda has been slow to develop. It's been moving more like a glacier than a Ferrari, and people are getting, they're getting annoyed because people want everything. We live in that world now of instantaneous gratification. But I see that the Bill of Rights, as you say, is an example of her maybe getting down to business on her core agenda. What I would say about the Premier is, I support her. She one I wouldn't say it's a criticism, but by way of a commentary, is I think that she's very strong in building consensus. It's in her nature to do that. She's very good at getting people together, getting them onto the same page, and that's good. But it can also be a hindrance. Talking about Margaret Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher had no regard whatsoever for consent. She didn't even read the newspapers. She had a very clear idea of the right way to govern, what the right policies were, and she did them. And she had no regard. In fact, she thought trying to build consensus was a complete waste of time. I think that we need less consensus building, and we need more Thatcherite governance, where our Premier, she's been entrusted by us. We've voted her in. She has a clear mandate. She has a majority. Govern us according to your vision of what you think is best for our province. And if we like what we see, then we'll vote you in again. If we don't like what we see, then maybe you won't last. But I think one of the struggles I have, and I challenge you guys to tell me, it's been 2 years. What is the character of the Danielle Smith government? How would you describe it? I struggle to do it. I'm not really sure what we have right now. What do you think?
Well, I was going to go back to, like people want things like that. Yeah. And I'm like, actually, I think most of us are pretty patient. Henceforth, we're sitting here, and now the anger starts to boil. I actually think conservatives have been very patient. Like we championed her when she got first in the UCP nomination, and then everybody... I remember having the same thought. I equated her to Woodcroft from the Oilers. Got a little runway, then she's got the big election day. She wins. Okay, here we are. And so people's patience, I think, in Championer have been very good. And listen, everybody knows I admire Danielle Smith. She's been on the show lots, and I got a ton of time for her. But Sheila Gunn Reid put it best. I'm not here just to go shake her hand and smile. It's like the problem we have in society is if you rule by consensus, use the consensus thing. Well, consensus in COVID was get the vaccine.
Yeah.
How wrong was that? Pretty damn wrong.
Yeah.
Right now, the consensus by pundits is that the world's ending in 2030 if we don't change climate. Well, how wrong is that going to be in the consensus? And, if you look at the world even further, it would say that boys can be girls.
Yeah.
And we should teach that in school. Well, how wrong is that going to be? So this consensus baloney. I guess I don't, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you two can set me right. I just look at it and I go, that's what you're up against. So you try and build consensus. Good luck with that, because the entire world is trying to tell you something different. And we can all sit here and go, well, we just wait 5 years and see what that brings and see where we are and see how quickly you keep your job, because it isn't going to be that. It's like people are telling you what you want, and the CBC and those news media outlets aren't going to tell you that. They're going to attack you every step of the way. But, once again, I'll bring up Tom Korski. He literally just said they lost another 10% of their ad revenue. Canadians don't care. So the consensus seems like it's there. It's this mirage where the hardworking people of Alberta specifically, I'll stick to Alberta, don't want any of the consensus jargon. They want what they know to be true, and that's the Margaret Thatcher approach, right? It's like boys can't be girls.
Yeah.
Climate change, it never stopped happening, but we don't have to stop everything to try and combat it. We can be responsible citizens. We can do things right that way. We don't need 15-minute cities. What else do I have to say? And that's what we're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Leighton's right. That's like, this demonstrates the supremacy of Christ compared to all other leaders, right? Here's Christ. Never once does he come to build consensus, right? He comes down to, he says,
I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he says, listen, I've come to tear mother from father and children from parents and friends from friends. That's why I'm here, right? I'm not here to bring you all together into one unified culture like Nimrod did back with Babylon and Assyria in the Genesis, right? It's the opposite. It's, I've come so that you might follow me. And that means you won't build consensus with a lot of your contemporaries, but you must follow me because it's the right thing to do. It's the true thing to do. So I agree with Leighton and yourself. Far from building consensus, that shouldn't be a leader's prerogative. Rather, it should be, here's what's right. Here's what's true. I'm going to pursue these goals because they are right and because they are true. And if the people like that, then they'll vote for me. And if they don't, they won't. And then that's an example of people, of a leader speaking for the people. Like, I think we have it inverted in this day and age where lots of leaders, or at least will be leaders, hopeful leaders, say, okay, we want to be a voice of the people. So that means we'll go to the people, we'll listen to what they have to say, and then we'll speak it in government. Fair enough. But you go to the people and find there are literally millions of people, and all of them have very different voices, right? And so whose voice are you going to present in government? Are you going to present Joe, who lives on 32nd Street, or Jim, who lives on 52nd Street, right? Which one are you going to promote, right? And the answer is it's impossible to do so. You can't. So instead, the way that you govern, or at least the way the people govern you, is by this. You say, here are my values. Here are my objectives. Here is what I believe to be true. And I'm going to promote this in government. If you agree with it, then as I mentioned, you'll vote for me. And if you don't agree with it, then you'll vote for someone else. And in doing so, you exercise your voice. And if you do vote for me, I'm speaking for you then, right? Because you agree with what I'm saying. If you don't vote for me, then you want someone else to speak for you, who you believe aligns more closely with your values. So I think Leighton's dead on the mark. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the example of Christ, because as a corollary to what Tanner said, Christ models something called servant leadership.
Yeah.
Which really our politicians don't model very well right now. The idea that you are a self-sacrificing leader of people, that you are responsible to them. And if we had leaders who understood that they have to lead according to some vision of the good, then we would have a very different society. We'd have something closer to a society that ensures the freedom and prosperity of individuals and families and communities. The other thing I would say, though, in fairness to someone like Danielle Smith, is that if you live in a society, in a country where you agree with absolutely everything that the leader says, then you're probably living in Nazi Germany. In other words, you're never going to find a political leader where you agree with absolutely everything that they do or say, right? And again, that gets at the problem with trying to build consensus, because using your example, how do you bring people together who live on 32nd Street and 52nd Street if they're never going to get together? Well, you've got to find some vision of the good that's going to make life better for them both. And your job as a leader, as a servant leader, is to figure that out.
And you can try and compromise. I hate compromise, right? That makes nobody happy, right? You can say, I'll take some of Jim's points and some of John's points, and then I'll try and bundle them together, and then nobody likes you. No one wants to follow you because you have you don't have any objective standard by what you pursue. You're pursuing no standard, so no one knows where you stand on anything, right? Like if you say we're going to try and appease Group X and Group Y and Group Z, all three of them are going to despise you. Can't serve two masters. And I know Jesus is talking about money there, the love of money and Almighty God, but the principle applies.
Solomon has a great idea about compromise. I actually wrote a paper about this. One of my commentaries is called The Wisdom of Solomon. Of course, this famous story of the two women fighting over a baby. And he reveals the truth by not giving in to compromise.
That's profound, right? What Leighton said. Yeah. You ever heard this story?
Tell me.
There's so David's son Solomon, he's king.
It helps when you get a guy. Just show the just tell the story.
He's the son of a preacher man, not me.
It's actually, I think it's one of the most profound stories in the Bible. Certainly it's the wisdom Solomon exercises here it's unbelievable. So you have King David. King David has a son, Solomon. Solomon becomes king, and his rule is regarded as a very peaceful rule where Israel flourished as a consequence of what he did and so on, for the most part. And he's this unbelievably wise king, right? Wisdom that is, like, you can't quite describe how wise he was. Wise and rich. Right? He had $2 trillion by today's standards. He's wealthy and wise. Anyways, one day, two women come to him in his court, and they're holding a baby. And one woman says, "This baby is mine," and the other woman says, "No, it's my baby. And actually, this woman stole it." And they're going back and forth, trying to figure out, whose baby is it really, right? So Solomon's sitting there in his chair, and he gets tired of listening to them bicker back and forth, right, about whose baby is this. So he says, "All right, give me a sword." And they bring a sword. He says, "Listen, cut the baby in half." And one half of the baby goes to one woman, and the other half goes to the other woman.
It's compromise.
It's a compromise. Here, you both get half of the baby, and
Governor Walz would be in favor of that solution.
That's exactly right. You both get the baby. Wow, fantastic. The one woman says, "Yeah, that works for me. Fair enough." The other woman says, "No, please don't do that. Give the baby to this other woman." And then Solomon renders his judgment. He says, "Got it. The woman who said give the baby to the other woman, keep the baby alive, is her son." And he declares this profound judgment. So far from compromising, right? Solomon figures out a way to use the possibility of compromise to decide whose baby it really is.
And when you go deeper into the story, the one woman actually killed her own child. Accidentally in the night. She goes and she steals the other woman's baby, and she replaces her dead baby with the other one. So she causes this woman
uncontrollable,
incredible grief. She wakes up in the morning and finds this dead baby, and it's not her baby. And super added onto that, her baby's gone. And this other woman has stolen her baby. And in my analysis of this story, I actually forecast what would happen in a modern woke court, where what a judge would do instead of what Solomon would do by applying absolute pure wisdom and reason. What he would do is he would look at which one of the two mothers ranked higher on the victimhood scale, and would apply social justice instead of biblical justice. And applying social justice, the woman who stole the other woman's baby would actually get the baby, and the other woman would be punished and scolded for having the audacity to insist upon actual justice and keep her own baby. How dare you insist? Can't you see how aggrieved this other woman is? Her baby died. Never mind that it's your baby. Never mind that she stole it from you. She's more aggrieved than you because her child's dead. And we're going to fix this. We're going to make this, applying Kamala Harris's reason, that, we're going to make everybody end in the same spot. We're going to give her your baby, and you know what? You can go off and have another baby.
It also pulls back to what I don't know why this theme keeps coming up when I hear it, but like Solomon finds this like immovable spot to be in and then uses it to gain profound or teach profound wisdom, if you would. Yeah. And I come back to, this is probably a terrible analogy, but the levels of government. We focused on how you can always just push it up. It's stupid. You just, it's not mine. That's a provincial thing. No, that goes. And the politicians do this little song and dance. And I hear, we're going to take that. We're going to use that. We're going to make it so that what the insanity they're pushing down, no, we're going to get rid of this. And I come back to, that's a beautiful story. I come back to this whole Danielle Smith thing. Because lots of people have been texting me, you're not a Danielle Smith fan anymore, Yeah. And so this Alberta question, right? Why Alberta? I look around the table and I go, I feel like this is why. And I know all the other provinces have it. This is, once again, I'm going to try and get off that grenade or landmine that I walked onto because I can just hear Sasky boys just giving it to me. But I look around the table and I see all these wonderful people that are like beyond, like how active Leighton's been or Tanner, or the list goes on, Tamara Leach, right? Like all these large names. But don't forget, Chris Barber was the head of the convoy. Where's Chris Barber? Saskatchewan, right? So, you can break this down. I see all these excellent people talking about it. And when you get excellent, like how do you make politics intriguing? I tell you what, you don't tune into the CBC. You tune into different shows, and I'll bring back up you, Viva, and Bruce, because that was an interesting discussion, because they didn't agree with you.
No.
And by not agreeing with you, it sucked me in. Oh, this is it. And I got a lot of time for Bruce and Viva and Leighton. They've all been on the show. And one of the things I think Alberta has done very well is provided means to get involved in politics and be entertained by it. I'm not saying that's the whole goal of it, but the entertainment value is why people go and watch hockey or on and on. They tune in to Spit and Chicklets. Why? Because they're sitting there and they're doing, it's entertaining. Yeah. Well, you want to learn about politics in a way that is captivating. You need people that are intelligent to talk about it. That has taken time. Alberta seems to be real fast on the uptake. Like they were all sitting there. I take zero credit for this. I just had on Dennis Modry.
Yep.
And
brilliant
I
guy.
sat across the table. I'm like, holy crap, this guy's got some things between the ears. And so that is certainly why Alberta, there's a part there. Like there's something here where it gets going and you're like, this is interesting. But the next thing is, for all these new political people getting used to the game. I wish it wasn't a game, but to me it's just it's what it is. Okay, fine. So you like Danielle Smith. I think a lot of us do. Right? She's excellent at speaking. She's talking back to Ottawa. She's doing lots of things. She's getting some things wrong. Heck, that's why you got 1905 committee. That's why you got probably the Black Hats. That's probably why you got all, because they want to make sure they pull her further to the right than to the left. And in that, people who listen to these things think that just by bringing up some of the negatives, all of a sudden you're saying in their mind, oh, she's the worst and get her out of the door. And that's a really interesting thing to notice from my standpoint. We're not allowed to criticize Danielle Smith?
Right.
Excuse me? I thought that's what we did on this show. Yeah. I thought we talked about politicians, showed what they were doing and showing what they're not doing right. And if it's Scott Moe, if it's Ebby out in BC, if it's Ford in Ontario, if it's Justin Trudeau, it'll soon be Pierre Poilievre by all stats. And you best believe we're going to start to probably talk about him too. And you got to get used to that. And I feel like that's a new class of people who are paying attention and getting involved in politics. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that one of the things that intrigue you about the conversation that we had with with myself and Viva and Bruce is, that you could have dissent. This is when we have meaningful conversations. And you cannot have any kind of useful conversation like the one we're having right now, unless you can risk offending somebody.
Yeah.
And maybe this is something that's different about Alberta, that, it says, I believe it's in Proverbs, that iron sharpeneth iron,
yeah.
right? And so applying that to ideas, we get the best ideas. The strongest steel is forged in hottest fire. In Alberta, we seem to still have an environment where we can have a 1905 movement, right? Where they're saying that they don't like necessarily what's happening in our province, and they can gather momentum and they can bring a group to the AGM. A few years ago, we had TBA, did likewise. This seems to be this populist movement, and the willingness to dissent seems to be alive and well in Alberta, and it may not be as thriving in other provinces. That might be one of the explanations. I think one of the signs of a flourishing society is the extent to which you can have dissent, political dissent. People can be free to express different ideas, and of course, our federal government is trying to impose a globalist agenda to stop us from being able to do that. And I think part of the sovereignty push in Alberta is coming from the grassroots level. And people still feel free to express concern and dissent about what's happening in our province, and that may be part of the explanation why we still seem to have a thriving, active conversation in Alberta about, how's the government doing? Is she doing a good job? The prospect that we could remove her as premier doesn't seem to exist in other provinces, and so I think that's a good thing. I think it perhaps holds leaders accountable, political leaders accountable, in a way that perhaps they're not in other provinces. What do you think about that?
There's a scripture. Someone asked Jesus, he goes, "Good teacher." And Jesus goes, "Why do you call me good?" He's quick to answer. "No one's good except God alone," he says. Of course, the insinuation is Christ is God, right? You're right to call him God, or you're right to call him good because he is God. But that principle only applies to Christ. What I mean to say is, when people tell you, because you've criticized Smith, or any other leader for that matter, you must not like her, or you must no longer like her, or you must not think she's good, I think we have every right to respond with, why do you call her good? Why do you call any man good, for that matter? You and I have an obligation to objectively scrutinize our leaders, all of them. And we scrutinize them based on the standard of Scripture, based on the standard of Christ. I'm able to say, and you're able to say, and anyone's able to say, whether or not a leader is doing a good job based on only the Scripture, only on Christ. That is the measure. That is the standard, right? Otherwise, you go around the province or the country and you listen to 10,000 different men say 10,000 different things about leader X. And one says he's good because he's doing this, and one says he's bad because he's doing that. And there's no general consensus. There's no absolute consensus about whether or not the leader really is good, because there's no objective standard. But if you impose that standard, if you decide to obey it, then all of a sudden there is something by which you can measure how a leader is doing, right? You can say, the law says X, Y, Z. A good leader will do X, Y, Z. Is the leader doing X, Y, Z? Yes or no? If they are, they're doing a good job. If they're not, then they're not doing a good job. And so when you go to the Old Testament and you read about Israel and Judah, when after the nation splits, the Chronicles and the Kings give a detailed description of the leaders in that split nation. And at the end of each leader's reign, it's always the same. Either it's the king did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and so he's given a check mark. Or the king did what was wrong in the eyes of the Lord, and so he's given an X. And almost invariably, the king is given an X. He does a very poor job. Almost all the kings in both of Judah and Israel do poor jobs, to be entirely honest, because they don't follow the Scripture. They don't follow the standard. And the same is true today. That's really the end of all things. Is the leader doing what's righteous or not? Yes or no? So you're right to criticize Smith if she's doing wrong. We're right to criticize Mo if he's doing wrong. We're also right to say good job if they're doing right. And that applies for every leader.
Well, and one of the groups that does that exceptionally well,
yeah,
Canadian Taxpayers Federation. I'm thinking of you, Chris Sims.
Yeah.
because she'll applaud the NDP.
They do. They're objective.
And she'll, right? They follow. They have a clear mandate.
Yeah. Simple. And it's great because it doesn't behold you. It doesn't make you beholden to any man, right? This is the wonder of being a nation ruled by law, is that it makes you beholden to no individual in power. Rather, it makes you beholden to a paper is just a piece of paper. It's true. But it does materialize for us a standard, a set of rules by which we are to be governed by, which are ours.
Well, you have to empower your citizens. So if it gets signed into law, correct? Right? That's what we're waiting on now, is a whole bunch of things to make it go from what it is into law. Correct, Leighton? I'm not a little bit off?
Well, my understanding is that what we submitted is not going to be translated verbatim, even though the UCP board has approved that. My understanding is that about 7 or so of the 22 freedoms that we submitted are going to find their way into the bill. But included in that are some pretty key ones, like bodily autonomy and protection of property and the protection of firearms as property. So there are some key ones in there. They didn't adopt all of them verbatim by the time, all the monkeys on the typewriters in the bowels of the legislature.
What I see after 2024 then, if this goes, the hopeful way, and I hate the eternal optimist. Some days I wonder about that train of thought, But at the same time, I just don't know any other way of being. So you go, okay, well, after 2024, learn them, and every Albertan should learn them. So when things start to happen in the future, no, that's not this is right here. And knowledge is power. So like you put the things into place, and in another 4 years, another 2 years, another year, you go, no, we need this one in. The voting public can go, push for it. And if they're not if they don't have the political will to do it, out you go. Let's find somebody who puts it in. Like part of COVID is, certainly all the institutions compromised, but part of it is majority of the public didn't realize which or how any of it worked anymore. They just, just going along, get along, and the only way I'm getting in there is that. Oh, I don't even know how to argue it. There's this famous book, Art of Rhetoric, right? And you think like we've all lost that ability to try and dictate to someone else what we're thinking. And by no means am I the standard. I'm working on it, right? I look at you two and I think I got a long way to go. But like at the same token, compared to 4 years ago, like how many of us just didn't even know how to think out of any problem?
Yeah.
So when you bring in these things and the Alberta Bill of Rights or other things that get signed in, it's going to give, hopefully, if we engage with it, the ability in the future to be like, no, that doesn't happen. And I see that for a population, specifically Albertans.
Yeah, you bring up a profound point: the inability to verbalize arguments in favor or against certain positions. That's intentional. I have no doubt that government has actively ensured that is the case, that the general population is unable to properly communicate what they believe about certain things. That is straight out of Orwell's 1984. That's the whole point of Newspeak, right? The whole point of Newspeak is to disable your ability to think by disabling the language, right? If you make language imprecise, if you don't train children particularly, but all people, to speak with a precise diction that most clearly, communicates reality as it is, then you completely dissolve your ability to think. Because that is what speech is thought, right?
And here's I'll take it one step further. If you can't speak specifically, it takes away your inability to pray.
That too. Yes.
We were just, when you walked in, I was talking to a friend on the phone about this.
Yeah.
Right? About praying, and I'm speaking for myself. You two fine gents can maybe add to this thought. Is if you're praying, that's great. But if you're playing and you don't get specific and use language, it's like, well, what did you just say?
Yeah.
Now,
you're right. Yes, of course, Christ teaches us how to pray. You need the language. There's also a scripture in Romans. Is Romans 8:26-28? Yeah, and it's talking about how there are times when you and I don't know what to pray. And so at best, we kind of just sit there and we almost meditate on the prayer. Now, in that case, the Holy Spirit does send up what Paul calls wordless groans to the throne. And Paul goes, the Spirit knows our heart better than we do. And so in that instance, the Spirit actually prays on our behalf. He's interceding for us, and he actually asks the Father what to fulfill the needs that we have, even if we don't know the needs ourselves. But nevertheless, right, you can't just kneel in prayer and sit there, right? You have to say, you have to speak, which is what Christ teaches us, right? That's the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, and so on and so on. I find it helpful to read the Psalms.
Well, the power of speech is even deeper than that, I think, because if you go back to Genesis,
totally,
and you ask yourself, okay, you've got this all-powerful, limitless God, could have created the universe in multitudinous ways, but chooses speech.
Yeah,
he spoke the world, the universe, into existence.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you go to the book of John, and it says that Christ was the Word made flesh and walked among us. This is the importance of language and of speech and of words. And it also explains why the method of attack from the enemy through the left is the changing and the destruction of our words. Yeah. Right? So, for example, in our Solomon example, really important word, justice. Okay? We have an instinctive understanding of what justice means, which is illustrated in the story of Solomon. Yes. But then what is social justice? It is a perversion of justice. Social justice is to rank people according to their level of victimhood and then place them above others. And the manifestations of it are as deep as no white person can get hired at Walmart or Tim Hortons anymore, right? Very, very deep manifestations of the manipulation and the destruction of language.
Yeah.
Very subtle.
Subtle.
And that's the thing with language, that it is. It's subtle.
Subtle is the word of the enemy, right? He uses words too, right? In the garden. He uses words when he tempts Christ.
Yeah, he does.
The ethics commissioner, right? And then the penalty of ethics is exposure. And, that you can go, why did they call it that? Or you can start to understand that maybe they did that on purpose. Ethics, because, intuitively we understand what ethics means.
Yeah.
Right.
But then when you listen to them, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you mean? You can just be the worst human being in politics and you do nothing? Exposure?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And this is what always comes back to giving me hope. I remember having these conversations 4 years ago. Language. And people would tell me that. I'm like, I don't get what that guy was saying.
Yeah.
But that's the slow burn of this. On the other side is it's, maybe not subtle, but like it takes time. It takes time to start to understand some of these problems and some of these conversations. Mm-hmm. And then you go home and chew on it and wrestle with it and hopefully pray on it. And all of a sudden it starts to, then you're sitting across from you two, or maybe listen to this wherever you're at, and you're starting to like grasp the where we're at in civilization.
But it's not new. If you know your Hamlet, when Hamlet is pretending to be a madman, he says words, words, words. He dismisses them, and what he's saying, he's saying, well, words are just rhetoric. They're just things that we can manipulate and change like anything else, right? Words don't have intrinsic meaning. We can make the words say whatever we want, and the way that we change the words will reshape reality. For example, a man can be a woman. A man can menstruate, right? So, see, it's not a new problem. We've been dealing with this. This goes all the way back to the dawn of time.
It does. Leighton's right.
I just feel like we're in the dumbest time of it when men can menstruate.
And it's one thing.
Dear me.
It's one thing to censor a man and, to take away his language so he can't speak. But we're going farther, right? Now the government is saying you must speak this, that, and the other thing.
Oh, yes.
Right? You see the difference?
Compelled speech.
It's compelled speech, and that is far more malevolent.
That's Jordan Peterson's.
That's exactly what that is. That's exactly what that is, right? It's one thing to say you can't say this. It's another thing to say you must say that, right? Because, again, speech is how you think. And so you repeat that enough. You repeat that, what they demand you say enough, you will begin to believe it.
2 + 2 = 5.
Absolutely.
Back to Orwell.
It is. That's why 1984 is profound. Yeah. Like, it's so profound because he had this almost supernatural ability to predict what was happening or what's coming, right? This 2 + 2 = 5, war is peace. You take things which are diametrically opposed to each other, and you act as though they live in harmony, right? What's a good example? Peaceful multiculturalism, Or successful multiculturalism. Diversity is our strength.
Yeah.
That's from 1984.
Yeah.
Right? That's straight from Big Brother. Diversity is our strength. No, it's not actually. Yeah. Lots of stuff with, just look at what happens in government, right? They stand up and they chant these. Yeah, it's just doesn't make any sense.
Boys, thanks for coming in and doing this. One last time, you're running in the election. Give out any election information that you want people to know about.
Well, I don't know if they can see on the camera, but I even brought a little card. I made these cards. I'm very proud of them, actually. And it just has the 5 points that I'm focusing on. Again, the family, championing the family is the foundation of the run, right? Every policy ought to be guided by, does it help the family? Does it allow the family to flourish? And so from that, you get policies like saying no to a 15-minute city. We say no to it because it doesn't allow the family to flourish, right? We say, say no to an increase in crime, right? We see all of this, we see all of this bureaucracy that's allowing what they call petty crimes to continue. They're not petty anymore, right? They're becoming more and more violent. It's like that doesn't help a family flourish. So that has to change, right? You look at taxation. Taxes continue to increase. Spending continues to increase. It takes more money from the family. It doesn't allow the family to flourish, right? We have this idea that when government spends, they do so to the best of their abilities. That's not true, right? It's inefficient. Spending is generally inefficient with government. And so as unpopular as it might be, cuts are needed. So again, the foundation is, does it champion the family? Does it permit the family to flourish and thrive? If it does, it's a good policy. If not, it's something that we ought not to pass.
I think your slogan should be Tanner Hnidey, a good man.
Oh.
You should also mention your book that you got to read.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I suppose I have a book, Kingdom of Cain. It's all about the insanity of progressivism.
Wonderful book, folks.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a short, fun one.
And you have a second one coming, correct?
There's one coming.
I was about to say, wait a second.
Yeah.
Did Leighton get a book that I don't have? No, we both read it. It was wonderful.
But there is one more that's coming, hopefully by Christmas. We're working hard to get it done.
Cool.
Yeah.
Leighton, any final thoughts? I don't mean to. I appreciate this conversation a lot. It's almost a thought of maybe a guy should be doing a monthly roundtable where you bring in a few different people in studio, because as we both know, as everybody sitting here knows, it is 1,000 times better when you're sitting in studio and you get to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess we'll wait and see what the audience thinks of the conversation. I've enjoyed it, but Leighton, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Well, I just want to encourage people, as Tanner said, to not be discouraged by what's happening right now in our country. And if they take anything away from the Black Hats group or movement or whatever, it's that, you know what, it's still out there for you. It's still open for you to get involved. You can make a difference. Every single person who's listening to this or watching this has something really important and valuable and unique to offer to their neighbors and to their communities. And the Lord's second commandment is to love your neighbor. Part of that is a willingness to get involved in the community, to take a risk. I promise you, if you do that, it's not going to be all, sunshine and roses, but you won't regret it. I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad I got involved, sort of more openly and politically, as it were. But we need more people to get involved in the communities the way Tanner is, because that is really. That is what is going to preserve and promote the kind of communities that we all want to live in Alberta and in our country.
Yeah, it's exciting. I don't know. I think it's exciting because I got asked a lot if I was gonna run in city politics, and I was like, "Wow,
you'd be great."
You would.
Yeah.
I don't know. I maybe I might be a bull in a china shop, or I might be
I could see you as being like a Ron DeSantis type.
Sure. My issue right now is 3 young kids. I was just looking at the schedule. Think about this: 6 hockey practices, 3 hockey games in a week, and that isn't even touching anything else.
I remember those.
I'm like, I'm really excited about it. But the wife and I talked about this. Do you get involved? And she's like, well, what are you going to give up? And I was like, that's a fair point. And then I talked to Tanner about it, and I'm like, but is it the point where you might lose everything if you don't get involved? Like there's more than just the. But go back to the 99-year-old that I interviewed in Carrot River. He was ecstatic about how all of his kids turned out. That they're all happily married. They have grandkids. He has great grandkids. you go, it's all about like family, such a huge thing. And I do not take that for granted. So I am very happy that a guy like Tanner is stepping up to run, because I think, you talk about what I could be. I go like, what's Tanner? Like, that should be. I might be tuning into Monday
serious.
Council if he gets elected.
Sky's the limit for this guy. He's got all the.
What's going to get people tuned into Monday council meetings? It's like, I don't know, some interesting discussion. Like, I think back to why is Alberta different? Certainly part of it has to be that there's interesting discussion happening amongst its citizens, almost, if not weekly, or sorry, not if daily, for sure weekly. And having you guys come in here and do this, it really spurs on the thought that maybe it should be happening monthly, because one of the guests you've both got to witness, I think, Tom Luongo and Alex Traynor in Lloyd, they come on monthly, and people love it. But that's it's a
very dynamic conversation
and a very large conversation. You're talking about the world powers, and one of the things is trying to find a way so that we talk about Alberta or even Lloydminster with the same level of what's the word I'm looking for, because it's an open conversation, but they know their stuff,
right?
And it's like I gotta go, I gotta get out of the vehicle, but I don't want to. If you can create something like that, I don't know, sky's the limit, I guess. Like Danielle Smith, she got elected by being able to talk and talk to people. It's such a lost art.
Speaking of being able to talk, this gentleman here is one of the most compelling live speakers that I have seen. In many,
and he sits here in Lloydminster.
Yeah.
Who's
so if you get a chance to see Tanner today speak in public, folks, you really must.
Who's sorry,
Billy Graham quality.
We've all been on their show, and I'm forgetting it. The father's son.
Corey and Alan, Talk Truth.
Talk Truth. Thank you.
We were just talking about. Just talking to him this morning about you.
Ah.
You won't like what he said though.
No.
He said Tanner's a good man.
Oh.
Well, they said something interesting to me, and it was about this area, not just specifically. What is going on in that area?
Yeah.
And they brought up Leighton.
Yeah.
They brought up you.
Yeah.
And of course they were sitting talking to me.
Yeah.
And then you go, I don't know, like why here and not Edmonton?
Yeah.
Or you could list off a whole bunch. There's a ton of wonderful communities across Western Canada that have a lot of things going on.
Lots of high-tech rednecks.
Yeah, they come back to the people, right?
Yeah.
So regardless, thanks for coming in and doing this, boys.
Thank
and I don't know, I'm having some thoughts on maybe we should do it again and very soon. But regardless, we'll let the people decide if they enjoyed it or not. And safe travels, and thanks.